Oh, yep, we're back. And I'm going to go to the next slide right away with geology for engineers. And we're going to talk about igneous rocks today and how to classify them. You may remember this figure here. And I'm going to call up my pointer, this figure here, of an active continental margin. We had convection currents in the subduction zone that was diving below a continental crust. All right. And then you had friction here along the contact between the convection current and the oceanic crust that dived below the continent. And it created a lot of heat. And so you can get some magma either coming up from the mantle and intruding the crust, or the crust itself might heat up and form magma. So you're getting kind of a mixture of mantle and crust material molten, creating here a magma channel, a chamber. And there may be even a connection through a pipe or a vein to the surface, and then the magma breaks through and create on the surface magma flows, which we call lava, and volcanic ashes, plumes that go into the air and create volcanic rocks here at the surface. If it cools off here below the surface, the magma cools off and then it creates plutonic rocks. And both plutonic and volcanic rocks is what makes up the igneous rock. And igneous rocks are associated with fire. Right. So when the subduction zone drags down the oceanic crusts, it collides partially and dives under the continent. Right, that creates compressive forces, which thickens the crust quite often because it crumbles the rocks together, like shown here. Right, and when the rocks get thicker, then through isostasy, and the rock is floating on the mantle, which is liquid, and just like a cork, when the cork is thicker, it sticks out further above the fluid and goes down deeper into the fluid. So that creates here the root of the mountain system. But the mountains are just a bulge at this point in time. They haven't eroded out and sculpted by ice and water, so it's not much more than a bulge sticking out above the ocean. Right? And then here and there you see a volcano like Mount St. Helens coming through. The rocks in the continent around the magma chamber will heat up as well. And they may partially or entirely, well, partially, if they entirely melt, then they become, of course, magma. But if they partially melt and then cool off, then they become a deformed or changed or metamorphosed rock. And those are called metamorphic rocks. And they often form a halo of metamorphic rocks around the magma chamber. And once the magma chamber cools off and crystallizes and becomes a rock, then it's called plutonic rock. And the one at the top is volcanic. So if you go to the other side of the continent, you can often find a rifting zone like the Red Sea, as we discussed before, right? And then you can get between two broken pieces of the continent, you can create a rifting zone. And then magma comes up through the rifting zone and creates a mid-Atlantic ridge. And then the ocean floor that is being formed there pushes away the two broken pieces of the continent apart. But there is no subduction zone there. It's just oceanic crust and then going over into the continent itself. And it is a passive margin. And that was something I didn't tell in the introduction. So now you have it. Okay. So we have metamorphic rocks, we have volcanic rocks and plutonic rocks. The plutonic and volcanic rocks together are igneous rocks, and we're going to talk about how to classify those rocks. So I'm going to show you this beautiful volcano, the Haleakala crater on Maui, 10,000 feet or above sea level. That's how high this thing is. And part of this crater form here may have been due to weathering. Over the last 1,000 years, though, we had here about 10 times a period of eruption. And you might see here in the crater, you see smaller cones. We call them cinder cones with their own tiny craters in there. Right? So Haleakala is one of the largest volcanoes that form nearly 70% of the landmass of Maui. Here we'll show you a landscape that might remind you of the moon, right? And that is how raw Earth can be. But weathering brings and rain and water brings down creates plant growth because these rocks become softer and weathered, and it creates soils, and then plants can grow there, and ultimately it can develop into what we know as Maui, a beautiful area with nice shorelines. Okay, so I'm gonna pause this video. It's now 15 minutes. That's absolutely the max. And then we're going to create some links so you can visit Haleakala on video by yourself.